Now staying with funerals, I'm now joined via Skype by Cajee, who is the Gauteng Chairman of the Islamic Burial Council, to talk more about the changing dynamics of funerals during the COVID-19 pandemic. Mohammed, thank you so much for your time and for joining us on our program this afternoon. Undoubtedly, the COVID-19 pandemic has changed almost everything, and now the face of funerals. Talk us through, with regards to particularly the Islamic community, what's the current process of your burials of those who have died due to COVID-19?
Thank you for having me this afternoon on your program. And yes, definitely, South Africa has gone through this pandemic, and it's rife within our communities and the entire communities of South Africa. And currently, we are faced with Muslim burials on COVID-19 itself. We have currently come with the terms of burying our deceased as fast as possible. And yes, we don't require storage facilities currently at the moment, due to the fact that our teams are actually on the ground 24 hours, 7 days a week. And our funerals are basically covered within a few hours of the person passing away. Noting that at the end, we've noted that the only delay is hospitals releasing bodies to us if paperwork is not completed correctly or they are waiting a doctor to sign off. But other than that, with our environmental health practitioners and people within our regions itself, we've been allowed to bury as quick as possible.
One can imagine that your operating procedures as well as protocols with regards to handling bodies of those who have passed from COVID-19 have changed, and for many others across the world have also changed. Talk us through the process of how some of those people working with, the bodies have had to somewhat adapt with regards to the new normal.
So within our Muslim community, we have a great amount of volunteers that actually assist in doing these burial processes. People that are in business environments, people that are basically doing other businesses. Yes, we have a few employed staff to assist in as support teams in other type of structures. Myself and my executive board itself and other members are basically into business as well. But our passion towards our community to go out and assist them throughout the day or night is something that we've basically come to terms with. Obviously, working closely with our environmental health practitioners itself, who are part of the environmental process of burying our deceased as quick as possible. Noting that we had to take the necessary precautions when it came to PPE, when it came to the regulations. And we've worked streamlined with them, passing all criteria, maintaining that all our facilities are compliant within the health department itself. And the processes for Muslims are as quick as possible. We are preparing for the wave coming forward at the moment. We are geared as Muslim organizations. We are in discussions to ensure that we have the right amount of resources available.
The Gauteng province, as well as nationally, everybody is expecting a huge peak, therefore subsequently a peak also in deaths. Talk us through some of the preparations on your side which you have made for that peak when it hits.
So we've increased our volunteer teams. We've basically been briefing so in our religion, basically the preparation of bodies are done by men and females as well. And both teams have come together, and we've briefed each team. We've put in a set of guidelines for our teams on how to basically process COVID-19 funerals. We have people within our organizations that oversee the processes that we basically go through itself. And yes, we are in discussions with city parks, who are the custodians of the cemeteries. We as a Muslim organization of CIT and FMYO in Johannesburg are custodians of the West Park Cemetery and Nuclear Cemetery. And yes, on a daily basis, we're going through the processes with our executive to ensure that our spacing is available, that we have graves prepared, and that our teams are readily available 24 hours, 7 days a week at the moment. Our engagement with various hospitals currently at the moment and other facilities in ensuring that we can release bodies efficiently and quickly so that we could do our burials efficiently, and also note that our teams would be able to bury a person, for example, passes away at 12 o'clock at night, which I've been part of a process, and by 4 o'clock in the morning we've interned and buried that person immediately.
One can imagine that certainly things will then have to change eventually. You've mentioned that at the current moment you don't have necessarily issues with regards to matters such as storage, but should the need then arise, has there been any engagements with regards to really speaking to the relevant authorities on mapping out a plan should you be met with that problem in the future?
Yes, definitely. I think on a daily basis we're engaging with various people within your environmental health departments, your city parks areas, and basically engagement with government at certain levels as well to ensure that our processes are done efficiently. We've given out our services to others that are in requirement. Also noting that as burial organizations throughout South Africa, our costing that we basically get are not government funded costing whatsoever. These are derived purely from funds within our Muslim communities itself, donating towards our PPE, donating towards our equipment, and obviously we don't get funding from government, whether it's a person that's poor, and we do this as a community voluntary completely.
And just lastly, as we wrap up our conversation, Mr. Cajee, you know, when you're looking at funerals and the whole process, it's pretty much a time to give families and the loved ones of that specific person time enough to say goodbye in a proper manner. Has the COVID-19 crisis so far had an impact with regards to that specific issue?
As Muslims, we know the concept of burying as quick as possible. Yes, we have a challenge where bodies are not taken back to the family homes, which is not a challenge, but I would say that it's something that our Muslim community has come to terms with at the moment over COVID-19. To give the family closure, we basically have been allowing family members, as per our regulatory bodies, to view the deceased faces, to close relatives of the family, just to give them the final closure itself before we do the burial itself. Our normal process in a Muslim funeral would take between 2 to 3 hours maximum for the complete burial itself. Yes, we know there are various regulatory issues around COVID-19 for the Muslims, but we're thankful to the government in our people of South Africa that we've been allowed the processes to continue with our Muslim burials with the most dignified and respectful manners currently. And future we would like to definitely work with government and other departments to ensure that the processes are done correctly.
Well, Mr. Cajee, thank you so much for your time and for availing yourself for this interview with us right here on the PM edition of Newsfeed. Mr. Cajee over there, Gauteng Chairman of the Islamic Burial Council, speaking to us about the changing dynamics of funerals during the COVID-19 pandemic.